Welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. This video is dedicated to Bob Carson. First thing we're looking at is the sun in ionized helium. And we look at the sun in different wavelengths because it shows us different properties as to the chemical features that we see happening on the surface. If we add ionized iron to it, we see different portions of the closest star. The lower corona is highly visible in 171 angstroms, which is the layer we've added, that ionized iron showing up there, along with the ionized helium. Here's a different ionic state of iron. This is 335 angstroms. The emissions of that ionic state of iron. And you can see it shows different features indeed than it does in 171 angstroms. An indication that these different ionic states of iron behave differently while they are in the solar corona. It's ultraviolet light. We use radiography and light polarization to get this colorized magnetogram. All that imagery is from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And we've got three sunspot groups here, all in the west. They've largely remained stable. I think they may have actually degraded a little bit. We've seen a decrease in the radio flux as well. Here's another ionic state of iron here. This is 94 angstroms. And this is one of the best wavelengths to show solar flaring activity, which has been at a surprisingly low level here. We're expecting to see an uptick as the solar flare watch continues. We've also kicked up a coronal mass ejection watch. We'll get to that later in the video. The radio flux has dropped down to 86. So the 10.7, the F107, whatever you want to call it, the 10.7 centimeter radio flux is the most proportional data set to sunspot number. There's the one-year chart, the black lines, the radio flux, the red lines, the sunspot number. And there's a space weather enthusiast dashboard. We are expecting to see some geomagnetic unrest later today and throughout midday tomorrow approximately. You can see a KP4 there. I think this might be a little bit more extreme, as we've already got an elevated solar wind speed. We've got an electron flux warning as well. And we've got a little bit of an earthquake lull happening again here. Really over the past 90 days, we're seeing a very low number of earthquakes in the 7 magnitude range. You can see that earthquake drought there in 2020. There's 2019, and you can see the frequency of 7 magnitude earthquakes has been quite low. That's the 90-day bar graph of earthquake activity. And we're seeing very low seismicity at the moment, in my opinion. Some earthquakes around Japan, though, in the 5 magnitude range there. Also a Solomon Islands quake in the 5 magnitude range. El Salvador saw a 5.7. That was at the surface, at estimated depth of 10 kilometers. A 5.3, one of the largest quakes of the past 24, occurred in the Aleutian Islands there in the North Pacific. And let's continue on to invite everybody to follow us on Twitter. If you don't follow us on Twitter, why not? There's exclusive content there. So check it out, twitter.com/smashamash. Look, it's Neil Ferguson. I think he belongs behind bars because of his fraud. And leave us a comment if you've got government, quote, officials, and quote, that you would prefer to see in jail for their criminal negligence. Let's take a look at the volcano activity for today. Some lava fountaining happening at La Palma as volcanic activity occurs. Sustained lava fountains, an increase in activity in the northeastern side of the cone. Pardon all the noise in yesterday's video. We forgot to mute the Twitter video, and we had volcano sounds throughout the video. So there's some of that Strombolian activity kicking up there at La Palma. Sakurajima also erupting, flight level 080. Subanosejima, flight level 060. That's a 6,000-foot plume of volcanic ash from Subanosejima. Semaru, flight level 130. It's a 13,000-foot ash plume, 15,000-foot ash plume from Fuego over Guatemala. Nevado del Ruiz, 20,000-foot ash plume over Colombia. Sangay, 30,000-foot ash plume over Ecuador. So that's a big uptick there in the Ecuadorian volcano Sangay. Flight level 300. Lots of volcanic ash causing some fertile soil to occur in the South American nation. Revenador also exploding, 15,000-foot ash plume from Revenador. Sabancaya exploding, 26,000-foot plume of volcanic ash from Sabancaya. That's located in Peru. And intermittent emissions from Nevados de Chilean are a reason to not pole vault the caldera. Please visit the links below the video if you like these videos and you would prefer to see them continue to exist, remain publicly visible, and free for all to view. Perhaps pick up a Fauci fraud bath mat, or maybe a Fauci face of evil bath mat. Fraudster Anthony Fauci, featured on various products here. Do you know people who are hypnotized? Maybe this will snap them out of it. I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but you've got to try, folks, because where there's life, there's hope. And the face of evil is often directly in front of your face, telling lies right to you and being believed by large swaths of the population. So welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. Congratulations on realizing we exist. Press like, press subscribe, press share. Share on your Facebook, although maybe you'll end up limited in your ability to post things like we are on the pathetic Meta-powered website. Facebook, one of the cheapest and most ridiculous software on the entire internet. We're alt tech. And so check out our homepage at smashomash.com. You can find our smAsho merch link there. That'll take you to the Redbubble shop, as well as links to the Smash team. Here's a teaser at the Smash team. Crypto, what's in your wallet? XLM is vastly undervalued. Let's stop advertising and go back to magnetic data. Do you have a magnetic personality? Well, here's the magnetic data from the Go 16 and Go 17. Do you have a repulsive personality? Should you not be making content on YouTube? If you're a content creator, drop us a line. Perhaps we'll feature you on the channel. We've got some likely interviews coming up next week, actually. Anyway, the GOES magnetometer there over the past 3 days showing a pretty tight range here. And there is a pretty powerful plasma stream on the way to Earth at the moment in the form of a coronal hole wind stream. Yeah, an additional coronal hole wind stream. So let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet here, which I did have loaded before. Keep in mind the data here is nearly 2 hours old. There is a South Pole current sheet rushing toward us. And we may see some additional sunspots in the northern hemisphere. Here's the line of sight view. And we've refreshed that. You can see that blue line swinging around there. And we don't really try to forecast sunspots. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can change rather suddenly with basically no warning. And here's the coronal hole plot, and we've got some additional transequatorial coronal holes here from the southern polar orientation there. So you see those transequatorial coronal holes there just rotating into view in the eastern limb. An indication that cycle 25 is indeed progressing. The transequatorial coronal holes facing Earth are north pole oriented, and we can expect some strong solar wind. Some extended high-speed solar wind from those coronal holes. There's a view of them in 193 angstroms. This is yet another ionic state of iron. And for some reason, this ionic state of iron evacuates the area around coronal holes. It's telling us all kinds of stuff about the heliophysics when we look at the different chemical structures. Likelihood of solar flare still quite high here, more than 1/3, more than 30%, I'll say. And it's because we've got at least two beta class sunspot groups, one down here and one up here, as well as an alpha class sunspot 2898. And those are going to lose their name today. Again, look for some activity possibly kicking up in the northern hemisphere as a result of what we saw on the current sheet, the magnetism. Here's the flare profile over the past 3 days. No major flares. And don't be surprised to see some increases in flares. Again, there's a coronal mass ejection watch now in place as well. Flare watch and coronal mass ejection watch are both back. No spikes in the proton flux. And if we see a major solar flare, that would be an indication to keep an eye on the proton flux. And when I say ion, I'm talking relativistic particles. Next, the real-time solar wind. We show it daily because it's kind of important. Current solar wind speed under 500 kilometers per second. Actually, just moving back over 500 kilometers per second at 512 kilometers per second to solar wind speed. Solar wind density about 10.5 protons per cubic centimeter. And the BZ has just moved into negative territory, so we could see an uptick in the geomagnetism. The KP index is a measurement of geomagnetism. And you can see that brief period of geomagnetic storm and a brief period of geomagnetic unrest around the same time of day, late in the day yesterday. Here's the geospace Earth's magnetic moment from space, as modeled by the Space Weather Modeling Framework for the past 4 hours. And if you're interested in what was happening on a different day, we've got nearly 4 years worth of daily space weather videos. You can find all kinds of additional content on the channel at youtube.com/smashomash/playlists. Tons of videos there besides the daily space weather and meteorology segments. Anyway, pretty homogeneous pressure over the past 4 hours. Now looking at the ground magnetic perturbations, changes to Earth's B field at the surface level. Geomagnetism from space was the last frame. This is geomagnetism from the surface of Earth. Geospace delta B. Changes to Earth's B field, expressed in nanotesla magnetic flux density. And we see some magnetic pulsations happening around the planet. Let's let this one play through a second time here, as there are no major solar wind components. Although, like I said, the BZ just shifted. And when we see a BZ in the solar wind data there in the negative territory, it is more conducive to induced electrical currents as solar protons make their way through Earth's magnetic moments. Like the last frame, that's 4 hours of data, and you can see some magnetic pulses happening all around planet Earth as the solar wind shifts. Next, a diagram of the solar system and a 7-day forecast. Here's where things are now. And there's where things will be in a week on the 9th. Next, a star chart. And we've got Mercury, Mars, the Moon, and the Sun all up there creating a pileup, a cosmic pileup in the skies over Lehigh Valley. We've also drawn in the galactic plane here, which is that blue line there. And the ecliptic is the yellow line here, the path the sun will take across the sky. It'll be setting in Gemini today. Next, we're going to show you our coronal mass ejection watch. The viewpoint from stereo A at L5 and the LASCO SOHO C2 at Lagrange point 1. Stereo A here on your left, LASCO C2 here on the right. Coronal mass ejection watch for both the far side and the Earth side. In fact, there may be some ejecta propagating as we make the video. We may have to make a second video later in the day. And we might do a live stream today as well. So stay tuned for that. Once again, welcome to the Neo Renaissance. And let's do a cosmology segment. It's going to be brief. Today's featured object is not random in any way. It has to do with the astronomy picture of the day at apod.nasa.gov. And it's galaxy NGC 6822, known as Barnard's Galaxy. It's an irregularly shaped miniature galaxy. This is the ultraviolet light spectra from Barnard's Galaxy. And you can see a bunch of plasma structures there emitting ultraviolet light. It's pretty dim in X-ray. However, in visible light, it's fairly... There it is in X-ray. Okay, so there's not too much X-ray emission from it. But when we look at it in visible, such as on the pan-stars, a lot of blue stars there. So it's interesting in various different ways here. It's a miniature galaxy, NGC 6822. Let's take a look at it in infrared as well real quick. Here it is on the 2-mass. There are the thermal spectra of Barnard's Galaxy. Again, it's the astronomy picture of the day. Here's an extreme close-up in extreme high-res, apod.nasa.gov if you want to go download this image yourself. Makes for a great desktop, or perhaps your lock screen. And look for additional multimedia coming at smashomash.com/smashteam. We've been slacking on the multimedia because we've been working our butts off to create the content that our viewers want to see. So thanks to the Smash Team, smashomash.com/smashteam. We replaced Patreon with something vastly superior. And it's only going to get better from here, folks. That's today's Cosmology segment. Make sure you check our playlists for hundreds more Cosmology segment videos. No charging hazards at the moment, despite electron flux warning levels. Here's the one-year chart of the electron flux from Solon.info. Here's the 3-day chart, and you can see we just moved back into warning territory. So some unexpected gyrations there in Earth's electron flux. As one coronal hole stream ends and another one is set to begin. So it's a sort of a double whammy coronal hole wind stream happening here, and the electron flux typically does go up after a high-speed coronal hole wind stream. There you can see it happening. It's the relativistic electron forecast model, and we're expecting even higher levels here. So we're going to see high electron flux levels as well as a coronal hole wind stream striking at the same time. It could cause all kinds of communications outages as a result of those two things happening at the same time. And next we're going to show you the total electron content forecast through Earth's inner Van Allen belt. Your GPS satellite must communicate with your handset. When it has to communicate through a lot of electrons, it creates GPS errors, and that's what we're looking at here, total electron content forecast. The redder this is, the more likely you are to see GPS errors at your location. We're going to let it play through a second time here. And we've actually demonstrated this before. If you follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/smashamash, we've got screenshots of bike rides with average speeds of 10,000 miles per hour, where I rode to the Lehigh Valley to Missouri and back in a straight line at a weird altitude in a matter of only 40 minutes or something like that. It's called GPS errors. We're also going to show you the ionosphere layer. Here's the F layer located at 300 kilometers. And it's showing a vibrational frequency, and we're seeing continued anomalies happening here. The electron flux wasn't particularly anomalous, the total electron content forecast, that is. However, this is quite anomalous. So we're seeing both high and low frequency anomalies, and rather than try to explain where they are, I'll just show the anomalygram. So that's the ionogram showing vibrational frequency. Here's the anomalygram showing anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. Massive low-frequency anomalies here around the Atlantic Ocean. Big-time anomalies happening here, and also wild shifts, where we're seeing low to high-frequency anomaly shifts happen here. And we show this data daily as well, especially with so much conjecture about ionospheric prediction of earthquakes and so on, without people reading the papers, apparently. Anyway, here's the latest image. That's 21:45 Universal Time. I don't know why that's the latest image. Here, the latest image is 17:45 Universal Time. So maybe a lack of data there from Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. I don't know. Let's continue on to bonus features. And today's bonus features are going to be extra brief because the internet has gone down again, and I won't divulge the name of our internet service provider, just that we're shopping for a new one. So here's 94 angstroms. Again, coronal mass ejection and solar flare watch in effect. It could turn to a warning suddenly. And here's 171 angstroms by itself, my favorite wavelength. If I had to pick one, which I don't, the Solar Dynamics Observatory has like a dozen different wavelengths you can view. And you can read all about it at the SDO The Sun Now page. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists, and may that solar wind be at your back. Opinions expressed in this video, not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, least busted. Name it news.